Going through this particular series, it has been really fruitful for me, and I pray that it's been fruitful for you as well. Just as we've been able to have some conversations that oftentimes are left to assume, this has given us the opportunity to really be able to talk through and talk about some aspects of the responsibilities associated with being a disciple in the kingdom. And in this particular series, associated with being a member in church, a member of Church on Purpose, that helps us to be able to talk about what that means, what that expectation is, so that ultimately each of us can do our own personal assessment and identify whether or not this is a covenantal relationship. This is a contract. This is a commitment that we want to continue to follow through with. And for those that are new, that are coming into our fellowship, they have the opportunity up front to be able to be introduced to this information, so that they can then, at the beginning of their partnership with Church on Purpose, make the decision and the determination whether or not this is something that they want to commit to, if this is the ride that they want to go along with. And so it's been really valuable. And so this particular section that we've been covering since the middle of February has been about mature members and what that means as a member of Church on Purpose. And so we know that the first section that we walked through was the mind of a mature member, and the fact that mature members know and understand the history and the profile of the church. Mature members know and understand the affiliations and distinctives of the church, along with the mission, the vision, and the strategic goals of the church. And they also understand the structure and the service opportunities that exist at the church. And having walked through all of those lessons, I hope that as I was going down that list, you all were able to acknowledge that you have a different level of understanding and a different level of comfort with each of those areas. The expectation is not that you sit through one lesson and then you become an expert overnight. It takes repetition, and it takes application in multiple contexts to really be able to get a well-rounded understanding and grasp of these things, so that they become tangible and they begin to manifest in our lives. But now we've at least all been introduced to the information. And what I'm looking forward to is later on in the year, being able to actually put this into print. And of course, we'll have the digital version as well, but to be able to put this content, this outline into a print format that you'll be able to keep with you, that you'll be able to reference when you need to, in short order, so that you don't have to go back and listen to the entire lesson again to get all of this information. Obviously, the print version won't go as deep in depth as we have during these conversations, but it'll hit the highlights so that you can at least review it and refresh it. And and throughout the year, we'll also kind of be working on what that church covenant looks like for Church on Purpose. And so some really exciting opportunities to clarify our targets and really be unified in our pursuit of growth and maturity, as both disciples of the kingdom and members of Church on Purpose together. So we got through the head of mature members. And then we had the opportunity to talk about the heart of mature members and what mature members are committed to. And we began by talking about mature members being committed to kingdom authority. And within that, we talked about just the distribution of authority, where authority comes from, the delegation of authority. And then we talked about the authority of the Bible. We talked about the authority of the church, and we talked about the authority of the pastor. Then we got into covenantal relationships, and we talked about what it's like for us to exist together, and what that means, how we will be intentional about our service and support of one another, and the fact that our relationship as members in this church is more than just being members in an organization, but we are members of a body, which means that um, by being connected to this body, that we are responsible for and to one another, that we are that what we do has impacts on others, and those impacts can be positive or they can be detrimental to the body. And so it helped to elevate our understanding of our responsibility to one another as a part of a broader organization, which is kind of countercultural to this kind of independent approach that is kind of espoused by the world, that you got to do it all by yourself. Well, no, in the kingdom you got to do it with others. That is the way that we make progress. That is the way that we reflect and represent the character of God, is by how we exist in community, and our relationships, how we relate to one another, is integral to our ability to become, as a church, everything that God is calling us to be. And so after, we kind of laid the foundation with our relationships, then we had the opportunity to talk last week more in depth about church culture, and about the parts, the elements of church on purpose that we want to focus on, and that we want to develop as we continue to grow and expand. And we used the acronym pieces to highlight that, so that we would be able to understand and appreciate what that means. And so, the culture of church on purpose, being purposeful, being intentional, being in a culture of empowerment, an empowering culture, being a collaborative culture, an equipping culture, and a culture of true and authentic service, and understanding how important those elements are to helping church on purpose to be who church on purpose is called to be. Those elements, those pieces, are significant to the DNA of church on purpose. It's what God is calling us to do and to be, and which is extremely important if we are going to be working together, if we're going to be pursuing goals together, pursuing objectives together, and trying to manifest culture together. It's extremely important that we be aware of that, and that we be intentional about the implementation of that. And so, lots of great dialogue as we talked about the heart of mature members. And so tonight we're actually going to wrap up our mature members portion by talking about mature members' expectations. And so we're going to look at two sides of this. And the first we're going to look at is the members' expectation from the church. And then we're going to talk about the church's expectations from the members. And so the expectations go both ways, as they do in any relationship. In any relationship, whether they're spoken or unspoken, there exist expectations. Party A has expectations, whether spoken or unspoken, of party B, and party B has expectations, whether spoken or unspoken, of party A. And oftentimes where there is unnecessary conflict, it is oftentimes the result of either under communicated expectations or underappreciated expectations. Either uncommunicated expectations or underappreciated expectations. And so, if you go back and you think about a lot of the frustration and bitterness that begins to build in relationships with others, it's because we have an expectation that they would behave or respond in a particular way. And oftentimes we assume that they know how we expect them to respond. And because we believe that they know better, then when they don't do what we think they should know to do, then we get frustrated because we make the assumption that they're not doing that intentionally. And it's kind of like this whole fallacy of common sense. Well, you get older and you realize that the partner saying to that common sense ain't common is very true. because what is common sense for you is common because of the experiences that you've gone through, because of the information that you've been exposed to, and so that has become common knowledge for you. But because each of our lives is different, because all of our experiences are different, then what is common knowledge for you is actually different from what is common knowledge for me. Simple stuff like you would think that it's common knowledge to hold the door for somebody that is carrying something heavy and trying to get through the doorway. It seems like common sense. It seems like common sense that if you see somebody uh working and scrambling, and at the time you're not occupied with anything, that you would find a way to be able to jump in and support, and find out how you can assist. It seems like common sense that you would plan extravagant celebrations for your girlfriend's birthday, and things like that. I mean, there are things that, based upon our upbringing, based upon our background, based upon our experience, that are common sense to us, because that is commonly how we would behave in that situation. But common sense for us is not common for everybody else, because everybody else's experiences are uncommon to ours. And so that's why in relationships it becomes so important for us to find the courage, and the ability to communicate our expectations. Because when we learn how to communicate our expectations in relationship, then the accountability that we offer can is validated, because the standard has been established and the other party has been given the opportunity to either meet the standard, exceed the standard, or ignore the standard completely. And so then the accountability that you offer is validated, and really comes in to support growth, because both of you are at least in agreement of what the target was to begin with. And so and so that applies not only in our relationships, in our marriages, in our dating relationships, in our friendships, in our work relationships, in all these different places and spaces. Learning how to communicate our expectations, learning how to tell people what you need from this, it's vitally important. But it is also important in our relationship and our interaction with the church. Um, and again, it's important for us to appreciate that, just as we come into a relationship with expectations, so does the other party that we're entering into relationship with. And so when we talk about being mature members of a church, members by default come into relationship with the church with their own expectations, of how the church is going to behave, how the church is going to treat them, so on and so forth. But the church also has expectations of the members. And we need to be able to talk about those things so that we can understand, what are healthy expectations for a member of a church to have, and what are healthy expectations for a church, for the organization to have of its members. And so that's what we want to talk about tonight. And the introduction was really long, because the content from tonight's lesson is not really long at all. There are 3 points. I have two more slides, and there are 3 points on both of those slides, and two of the points are almost the same. So, when it comes to your expectations, excuse me, you really want to take the time to be able to boil those down to the root. You know, have with the categories being as broad as possible, because it gives you the opportunity to be able to work in that space and provide further explanation down the road of exactly what that looks like, but also have some flexibility in how that's interpreted by the other party. And so the first part that we are Oh, that was supposed to be up there a long time ago. Anyway, so the first part that we're going to talk about, of course, is so as a mature member, what should I expect from the church? So as a matter of fact, before I get into this, does anybody have anything that they want to share? Anything that's kind of going through your head at this point in time that you would like to just kind of throw out there to the group before we move into the rest of the content for this evening? All right. If no one has anything they want to share there.
I do.
Oh, go ahead, Karen. Thank you.
Um, Specifically, when you mentioned um, what you did about expectations and in relationships, that's profound to me because you have to realize that as a parent, because, like you said, common sense, just because I'm 55 and this is how I would do it doesn't mean you're 31 and this is how you're going to do it, right?
Yeah.
And you have to expect your child to do things in their way, you know.
Yeah.
But to set expectations, absolutely, as a parent, but at the same point, give them the grace God gave me to make my mistakes and find my way.
Boom.
And so that's just a realization to me because I'm always getting mad saying, why didn't you do it this way? Well,
Yeah.
stop saying that. So thanks.
Yeah. No, the frustration is real, you know. It's real. Because we establish those expectations in our lives because it makes it easier for us to navigate um space. Expectations are really a measure of control. They help us to not necessarily control other people, but they give us the perception of control in situations and circumstances because we expect people to respond a particular way, and so we prepare to respond to their response in the way that we think they're going to or the way that we think they should respond. And then when they deviate from that, now they've deviated from our plan and now we're frustrated because they're not doing what we want them to do. Like at the end of the day, that's what it boils down to. um and so that's why it's important that we communicate expectations, because if our expectations are unrealistic, we can have that conversation and be able to kind of come to some compromise and some mutual understanding about what is a more realistic expectation in this situation, in this circumstance, so that when that person doesn't do what you thought they were going to do, you're not all thrown off and frustrated and upset and all in your feelings now. But you are able to, like you said, Karen, to give them grace to navigate that situation or that circumstance in a way that that they feel like they need to. And then you can respond to how they respond, as opposed to being upset because you weren't able to respond in the way that you wanted to because they didn't do what you wanted them to do. Um, so go ahead.
Absolutely. I learned a big lesson in that your response is everything too. Your response is going to dictate that relationship in that moment and how they take advice from you and how they see you and how they respond to you and how that relationship is going to go and
Yeah.
how you're going to cultivate it is everything. I've learned that,
Yeah.
difficult way, but moving forward.
Yeah. Absolutely. We talked a while ago about, you know, about the formula E plus R equals O. So events in life plus our response is what equals the outcome. It's not the events that automatically produce an outcome, but it's the events of life and how we choose to respond to them that produces the outcome. And when we're in a situation where people aren't meeting our expectations, a lot of times our response is frustration and irritation and anger, and disappointment and disillusionment, and that ends up producing the outcomes which oftentimes aren't fruitful. And so, and so that's why expectations becomes really important, and being able to communicate them becomes really important, because it helps to equip you to be able to respond to things better and in a more healthy and fruitful way when things may deviate from how you anticipate they're going to go. But, really a big part of that though is, one, giving yourself permission to have expectations, and then doing the work of figuring out what your expectations are. Because we're with ourselves all the time, what's really easy for us to do is have expectations that we haven't even verbalized. And so we don't even know to give that expectation to other people, because it's so natural and so automatic for us that it's not something that we have to think of. It's like, if you grow up in a military household, and you get married, like, you finna expect everybody else in the house to be good with getting up before 5 o'clock. And that, because it's second nature to you, it's natural, and that's not necessarily something that comes up in premarital counseling. um but when we can slow down enough to evaluate our expectations, and to be able to say to ourselves honestly, like, what is it that I want this person to do in this situation? And because after you ask that question, then you can follow that up with, is that a fair expectation of them? Have do they have the knowledge to even respond that way? Are do they have the capacity? Are they equipped to even be able to respond that way? Have I given them the information that I need to give them in order to respond that way? It's kind of like if you're in a relationship, and you may, and this can be a friendship too, but maybe you're overwhelmed, and when you get overwhelmed, you like people to give you space, but your friend or your significant other, the way that they grew up is that when they're overwhelmed, they like to not feel alone. And so they do for you authentically what's natural for them, and what they would want someone else to do for them, which happens to be the exact opposite of what you want them to do. And so then it frustrates you, and it compounds the feeling of being overwhelmed, because the one person that you're counting on to love and support you is annoying the heck out of you when you just wish they would leave you alone. But the expectation has to be acknowledged, and it has to be communicated if the relationship is going to be able to move forward in a healthy way. Because once it's communicated, then you can find common ground, and you can figure out a way to be able to navigate through those moments in a way that is healthy for both of you, where you feel that you have the space that you need, but they feel that they have the connection and the information that they need to be able to support you. um so it's absolutely a growth space. And what we've been doing as we have been walking through this Describing Church on Purpose series is we have been communicating expectations. And it's always better to communicate expectations before you try to provide accountability, because it's not fair to hold people to standards that they didn't know existed. And so through this series, we are communicating the standards so that everyone has the information that they need, so that then as we start focusing in on how we can grow and how we can be better, and we start providing that accountability and that challenge to grow in the areas where we are weak, so that we can be mature and so that we can be better, um, the standard has already been communicated. And so then we're just having a conversation about expectations and about growth. And so when we talk about connecting with a church, um, whether we verbalize it or not, we walk into the building with expectations. And oftentimes we make our decisions about whether we're going to connect with a church based on whether our expectations were met or whether our expectations were not met or whether our expectations were exceeded. And that's a lot of places. You go to a restaurant and, you've heard a lot of things about it and people said it's really good. And you go in there with very high expectations of the quality of the food and the quality of the service and all those things. And if you go in there and the experience doesn't meet your expectations, it's it's not likely that you're going to return to the restaurant. Same thing with church. But if you go to the restaurant and people have already talked about it and said that it's really good, and then you go and it's even better than what they said, the likelihood that you're going to return is also there. And it's the same way with church. And so, as mature members, now again, emphasis on the word mature, because there are expectations that immature members have from the church. Uh, Things like everybody's always nice to me, and they never tell me what I shouldn't be doing. Um, Things like they always sing the songs that I like. Things like I should get to sit in my seat every Sunday. Those are expectations of immature members. Um, that I should be able to come and not give no money to the church and nobody say anything ever. Expectation of an immature member. Expectations of mature members in terms of the what they expect from the church. Number one is that the church will honor God in all of its endeavors. Again, like I said, these are blanket statements. These are broad statements that create room for interpretation and application to more minute and more focused experiences. But on a broad scale, members should be able to expect their church to honor God in everything that it does. Now, it's crazy that this even has to be a written expectation, but reality is that in our brokenness, if without checks and without balances and without support and without the guidance and the direction of the Spirit, we are, as the old hymn said, prone to wander into places, spaces, things, behaviors, activities, habits that are not honoring, that don't bring honor to God. But the member should expect the church to honor God in all of its endeavors. That means in its stewardship. So how the church manages the financial resources, the facility resources, and the human resources of the church. That expect the church to honor God in its collaborations, not linking up and partnering with people that are fast tracking people to hell. But are the collaborations and the connections that the church facilitates, do they honor God in the activity of the church? Now, this is a trick because we can be confused to believe that a lot of activity means that God is happy. But we can be doing a whole lot of stuff and it not be the right thing. Case in point, when Jesus is in Bethany with Mary, Martha, and Lazarus hanging out, and Martha's running around in the kitchen being busy doing a whole bunch of activity, and she gets mad at Mary because Mary is sitting at Jesus's feet listening and learning, and she tries to get Mary in trouble with Jesus and tells Jesus what he need to be doing. The audacity. tells Jesus what he needs to be doing. And Jesus is like, no, no, you troubled about you bothered by a whole lot of stuff because you got all this stuff going on. And in this moment, Mary is doing the right thing. So all activity isn't always good activity. And so even in our activity, even in our engagement and participation in ministry, even in our service in the church, we have to be intentional about, as a church, be intentional about making sure that it is honoring God. And it is a fair expectation of the membership that we would only engage them and involve them in activities that will bring honor to God. Not just stuff that's going to occupy their time, not just stuff that's going to stroke our ego, not just stuff that's going to move our brand and expand our influence. No, activities that are honoring God, that are pointing people back to God, that are equipping people and helping them to be better for God, that are helping God's name to be glorified and lifted up. Because when he is lifted up, then that's when people's lives are truly transformed. And so it is a fair expectation for each and every one of you that is on the line, that has made a commitment to church on purpose, that has entered into covenantal relationship with this body of believers. It is fair for you to expect this church to honor God in all of its endeavors. Stewardship, collaborations, activities, in its teachings, in its vision and its goals for down the road. You have permission to have that expectation of this church. You also can expect the church to treat each member with love and with dignity and respect. Now, I don't think this one requires a whole lot of explanation. All I'm going to say on this one is that you should feel each one of these. Each of you that's on the line should feel like your church loves you, that your church treats you with dignity, and that your church respects you. And if you don't, you need to schedule some office hours with me because we need to have a conversation. Because that is a fair expectation for you to have of your church, that you be treated with love and with dignity and respect, and not just you, but that the church treat each member with love and with dignity and respect. And finally, in terms of expectations that we have for the church, that the church would strive to create and maintain a healthy church environment. Church health is intentional, just like the health of your own body. Some people's bodies have higher metabolism, so it may be easier for them to process food. So they may not gain as much weight, but that because they haven't gained as much weight does not mean that they are unhealthy. Size is not an indicator, that is not the only indicator of health. There are people who physically have the outward appearance of being super healthy individuals who have terribly broken hearts, or who mentally are shattering into pieces. And so it is not the outward appearance that is always what matters. It is a key factor. It can be an indicator of what's going on the inside, but it's not the only indicator of health. And so we can't get lost in the appearances of health if we're not also doing the intentional work of maintaining health. It's the reason why when you go to the doctor for a checkup, they don't bring you in the room, look at you, tell you to spin around, and then tell you good. No, that they observe the outside, but they also do some things to get some indications of what's going on the inside. They check your blood pressure to find out how your heart is beating. They listen to you breathe to find out how your lungs are functioning. They draw some blood to find out what's going on inside your body. Why? Because just looking at the outside stuff is not an adequate indicator of health. And it's the same thing for the church. Just, looking at, we could choose to focus on what the attendance on Easter Sunday was like. Oh wow, must be great. All those, all these people in worship and everything, things are really growing and all this kind of stuff. We could choose to focus on that and get distracted by that and miss the opportunity to continue to grow and be healthy. And so it is fair for you to expect your church to strive to create and to maintain a healthy church environment. And that means that we have to be intentional about how we handle conflict. We've got to be intentional about how we communicate vision. We've got to be intentional about how we perpetuate culture. And those aren't the only ways that we become a healthy church. Matter of fact, one of the next series that we're going to go through with Pastor Hawkins is his assessment of church health. And that is going to equip us with some very strategic and intentional targets that we can use to evaluate on at least an annual basis of how healthy our church is, of some different indicators, but beyond Sunday attendance, beyond the number of views on the stream, beyond the offering, other indicators that are tied to and connected to our church and our culture that help us to understand whether or not we are truly healthy, or whether we're at risk of collapsing while we're walking down the street, or collapsing on the treadmill, or collapsing on the track because something on the inside that we ignored has grown and festered. So, as members of this church, it is fair for you to have the expectation that this church would honor God in all of its endeavors, that this church would treat each member with love, dignity, and respect, and that this church would strive to create and maintain a healthy church environment. Two people tell me what's going through your mind right now.
Just in hearing, it's just affirming, hearing it from you, it's just affirming. It's kind of like planting our feet firmly and saying up front, this is what the expectation is. And I forgot what I wanted to say, but it's just impressive that you put it out there that way, that this is my commitment as the leader of this church. And a lot of people tend to shy away from what their true commitment is to their church and don't want to admit that because you'll have to be accountable for it. But you literally want to be accountable, and that's impressive.
God bless you, Karen. One more person.
I was just gonna say it's encouraging to know that the desires and the things that we want out of the church are of equal. I don't know how to say this the right way, but of equal strength of what we are obligated to as being a part of the church. So, and that again, relating it back to God and how we do things to honor God, that is also reflective of our relationship with him as being a kingdom citizen. We can expect X, Y, and Z because we are kingdom citizens. And we have an obligation to fulfill what God wants for us, but we can also expect things from him and the kingdom for being a part of his kingdom. That makes sense.
That makes perfect sense. You're absolutely right. Again, in every relationship that we have in our lives, we have expectations, and that includes our relationship with God. He has expectations of us, but he also authorizes us to have expectations of him. And here's the thing: when expectations are communicated, behind that comes accountability. And thank you, Courtney, for going here, because this is a major space of an opportunity of faith where we need to grow, is understanding that God tells us what to expect from him. And when somebody tells you what to expect from them, it authorizes you to then hold them accountable, to hold them to their word for what they said they were going to do for you. I'm gonna let it sit for 30 seconds because you got to connect these dots. God tells us all through his word what to expect from him. And when somebody tells you what to expect from them, it authorizes you and empowers you to hold them accountable, to hold them to the word that they have given you. And if we did a better job of appreciating that, then we would be able to walk through the day with so much joy, because he promised that he would give us his joy, that his joy would be complete in us. And so we can hold him accountable to providing the joy. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't still have some things that we need to do, but it means that you can live with the expectation that your heavenly Father is going to provide for you. Why? Because he said that he would. And so if the provision hasn't manifested, you can remind him that he said he was going to provide for you. That if you don't see the provision, that you got to keep looking for it, because he said that he was going to provide for you. And your accountability to what he said in his word is your faith that continues to hold on until he does what he said he was going to do. We could sit in that for a long time, but I'm gonna bring it back to the context of our conversation tonight. You have been authorized as a member of Church on Purpose to hold Church on Purpose accountable for honoring God in all of our endeavors. That means if we're doing something and it doesn't look like it's honoring God, then you need to have a conversation with somebody. To treat you are now authorized to hold this church accountable for treating each member with love and with dignity and respect. You feel like we are being unloving to somebody, if you feel like we are belittling somebody and not treating them with dignity, if you feel like we are being disrespectful to somebody, you need to have a conversation with somebody. You are authorized to hold this church to the standard of striving to create and maintain a healthy church environment. And if you see us engaging in unhealthy behaviors or doing something that is a detriment to the health of our church, you are authorized to speak up and say something. You need to have a conversation with somebody. Because part of the reason we like to put a lot of responsibility on pastors for the troubles the church have, and on leaders for the troubles the church have, but the responsibility is on each member, because each member has been authorized to protect the health of the body. Now, in the process of of helping the body to be healthy, don't engage in unhealthy behaviors. And by that I mean, when you see something that needs to be addressed, don't go talking to somebody that can't do anything about it. Because at that point, you're not seeking resolution, you're gossiping. And gossip is not healthy for the body. If you see a problem, you need to have a conversation with somebody that can do something about the problem. That is the accountability of mature members. If you out here talking to other people that have no influence and no responsibility and no authority to act in order to respond to the problem that you see, do you really want resolution to the problem? That's like seeing water pouring down from your ceiling and you calling the electrician. What the electrician gonna do about a plumbing problem? Except come and look at it with you and be like, oh yeah, that is pretty bad. All the while the water's still running, damage is still being done. No, provide accountability, respond to the problems, respond to the issues, but respond appropriately by talking to somebody that can do something about the problem. Any final thoughts on this one before we move on to our next and final section, where we flip this thing and talk about what the church can expect from us? Members embracing this responsibility is the secret sauce to a healthy church. Members who refuse to allow the church to be unhealthy and are willing to do what's necessary to sound the alarm, to shine the light on the places and spaces where health is beginning to fail. That's how you maintain a healthy body, because pastor can't see everything, can't hear everything, can't recognize everything. The leadership can't see everything, hear everything, address everything. It has to be the responsibility of all of us to highlight and bring awareness to, acknowledgement to issues that arise that are a threat to the health of the church. That's why you have nerves all throughout your body. Because if your big toe gets infected, there's no guarantee that your eyes are going to be able to see that in order to then address it and help prevent the infection. If you rely solely on your eyes to be able to bring awareness to your body that something is wrong with your big toe, you probably going to end up losing that toe. If you expect the pastor to be the one responsible for acknowledging issues with every single member, then you're probably going to lose some members because the pastor doesn't have the capacity to be able to see everything. But that's why the body has nerves, because when the toe begins to feel discomfort because of the infection, the toe is able to send a signal to the brain so that the brain can then lead the eyes to then focus on the toe so that the infection can be identified, and then the rest of the body can work together in order to respond to treat, and to rectify the problem with the infection. And as members of the church, we're connected to the nervous system. And so if something is going on and you have questions about it, it raises a flag for you. To say nothing is to voluntarily allow the body to be unhealthy, which is to participate in the death of the body. If you see something going wrong and you don't say nothing, you are an accessory to murder. I'm gonna get off my soapbox now. I'm at Talisha, I might have to preach that one day. Accessory to murder. I don't know. I might have to preach a murder series. Murder in the first degree. Second degree murder. Accessory to murder. Manslaughter. Hold on, I need to write that down. All right, let's finish this up. So that's what we can expect from the church. Here's what the church can expect from us. Here are the expectations of the church for you as a member. Number one, to own your relationship with Christ and his kingdom and to make it your highest priority. This is the expectation of the church. So these are expectations that the church has for us, the members, that we would own our relationship with Christ and his kingdom. That means that we wouldn't put the responsibility on somebody else to make us grow. That we won't put the responsibility on somebody else to remind us to grow. But that we will own that. We will take ownership and responsibility for the growth and the health of our relationship with Jesus Christ and for our understanding of his kingdom and make it our highest priority. Now, why in the world would that be an expectation of members in the church? Well, because before we're members, we're disciples. And Jesus says in Matthew chapter 6, seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and everything else will be added unto you. And unfortunately, sometimes in the church, the expectation is that people prioritize the church and the pastor and their commitment to the church and their commitment to the pastor, even over their commitment to the kingdom and to Christ. At Church on Purpose, our expectation is that you own your relationship. You own it. That you are responsible if it's going well, and you are also responsible if it's not going well. It ain't nobody else's fault. You own it. And that you make it your highest priority. That our primary pursuit in life is a healthy relationship with Jesus and an understanding and application of his kingdom in our lives. Now, that doesn't mean that you drop everything and you just sit down and you read your Bible 24 hours a day. No, that's not what that means. Unless the Lord calls you to do that. But what that means is that when we get into this tug of war of our desires or God's desires, that as a mature member, we prioritize his desires as we try to figure out our plans or his plans. When those are buttoned up against each other, as mature members, we prioritize his plans. That sounds like a series. That's all that's talking about. Is that when Jesus and his kingdom come into competition with either our will or the will of the world or the will of our friends or the will of other people and their desires for our lives, whenever Jesus comes into competition with any of those things in our lives, that we commit to prioritizing him. Secondly, the church expects you to support the church with your time, with your talents, with your treasure, and with your testimony. Notice the use of and, not or. The statement does not say to support the church with your time, talents, treasure, or testimony. No. It says, and the expectation of your church is that you support the church with your time, that you invest your time into the kingdom through Church on Purpose to help it to grow. And that means, and that time means that's time invested, not always time being invested in. That means not just showing up to receive, but also showing up to give. With your talents, what have you been equipped with in order to help be an asset and to help build the body? Your church expects you to use those to help support the church. With your treasures, with your money. It takes money to do the things that we do. We got to pay rent every month at that building. And thank God for the Gladys's leadership as our stewardship ministry leader, being able to work out some things to make it easier for us to be able to meet our financial obligations. But it takes money to do the things that we do. It takes money to pay people's bills. It takes money to do these things. And as members of the body, the expectation is that you support the church with your treasures. If you giving money to everybody else, including Uncle Sam, and you not giving anything to the church, you are not meeting this expectation. And we don't do a whole lot of talking about money at Church on Purpose, because again, I'm not going to tell you how much to give. That's a conversation between you and the Holy Spirit. But receive this conviction if you're not giving anything. Because a part of the body that is not contributing to the body is, I don't want to say it like that, is not pulling its weight and is hindering and limiting the body from being able to maximize its potential. And it's not an either or. It's not, I don't have to give treasure because I'm giving my time. Your time ain't never paid nobody's bills. It is all of us being equally vested and supporting together. And not equally in terms of amounts, but equal in terms of commitment. And finally, your testimony. Crazy to think that you can support the church with your testimony. Now, there are multiple facets of this testimony. It is your testimony of faith. You support the church with your testimony of faith. You talk about the things that God is doing in your life and what he's done for you. That's an inspiration and a motivation and an encouragement for people that are trying to find the faith to hold on, to believe that God is going to do for them what they're waiting on him to do. That's the beauty of your testimony. And I'm super excited because of a behind the scenes project that's being worked on that will be revealed at a later date and time. That is going to be, it's going to be kind of what we already do, but on steroids. And it is going to, I'm going to shut up because I'm about to say too much, but it is, yo, it is going to be revolutionary. Like if you think Church on Purpose right now is doing some unconventional stuff, hold on to your butts. And that's all I'm gonna say. Anyway, so your testimony of faith is a support to the church, but so is your testimony of your life. Your life is a testimony that either supports or doesn't support Church on Purpose. And y'all, you know this already, even if you haven't acknowledged that you know it, but you know this already because oftentimes we say, well, we don't want to go, we don't want to go to that church because so-and-so over there at that church, blah, 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 blah. Those people over at that church, blah, 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 blah. Matter of fact, y'all did that to me a couple years ago for a holiday that was coming up. It said that y'all want to go somewhere because of those people. And here's the thing: the same thing that we do to others, other people are doing to us. And the question is, what is the testimony of our life telling people about Church on Purpose? Is our life a support to the church by being a beacon of light and hope that people can experience transformation and love and support and an enhanced relationship with Jesus Christ if they come to Church on Purpose? Or is it a testimony to them that says, nah, it's just church as usual? It's pretty much the same thing you get everywhere else. Nothing special. I know you can go over there and you can do whatever you want to do too, and everything be cool. Is that the testimony that our lives give? Is the testimony of our life a support to our church? And then finally, the testimony of our relationship with the church. Is our relationship with Church on Purpose a testimony to others? I believe, and this is just from my perspective, and again, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that we do a good job, an adequate job of supporting our members. I believe that. But here's the question. Do people around you know that? I believe that we do a decent job of providing education and inspiration for our members. I know that. You know that. Do the people around you know that? I believe we do a pretty good job. We've struggled from time to time and in some places, but I believe we do a pretty good job of giving people the grace to authentically experience their relationship, the growth of their relationship with God. Meaning that we provide loving accountability, but not condemnation and judgment. So we don't let people just run around all willy-nilly doing crazy things. But we find a way to be able to bring awareness to the opportunities to growth and the hindrances in our relationship with God. I believe we do a good job of that most of the time. I don't know what you believe about that. And I don't know what the people around you know about that. What are you saying? Get to the point already. That's enough examples. The testimony of your relationship with this church has far more influence and impact than you believe, than you can understand, than you can conceive. If there are so many great things happening at Church on Purpose, then why don't people around you know about it? Why don't we feel motivated to go and to share with others when our church has been the church? And I don't mean the with a capital T, but the with a lowercase t and a capital C. When our church has done something that is reflective of the expectations that Jesus has established for his church in Scripture. Why don't we run tell that? Because your testimony of your relationship with the church, man, we was out here, we didn't know what we was going to do, and the church came through. That is a support to your church. Because that helps people to understand and to identify a place that will love them and care for them and support them. And I don't have to tell you what it's called when lots of good things keep happening, but you don't tell nobody about it. So I want us to think about that, because our testimony is a support to the church, and I'm giving you the expectations that your church has for you that you will support the church with your time, with your talents, with your treasures, and with your testimony of faith, the testimony of your life, and the testimony of your relationship with this church. I love it when y'all start talking about the kind of impact that Church on Purpose has had on you. I want to know how many other people know how you feel about Church on Purpose. You ain't got to tell us. We were there. We already here. We already committed. We already found what we was looking for. It's a whole bunch of other people out there, though, that are still looking for something. And many of them are looking for what you already have. And here's the beautiful thing about it. Because, sometimes I think in church we feel the way that I felt when Janae got pregnant the second time with Jada. Because during that time, like, I loved David so much that I was actually nervous. I developed anxiety because I couldn't conceive that I would be able to love another child with a love comparable to the love that I had for David, because I was like, this is all my love. Like, how do I love him this much and then adequately and appropriately love this other kid? And an amazing thing happened. That chick was born, and I love her with my whole heart. And while I love her with my whole heart, I also somehow found a way to still love David with my whole heart. And then Joseph came along, and I found a way to love him with my whole heart while still loving Jada with my whole heart and still loving David with my whole heart. And then Maya came along, and I found a way to love her with my whole heart while still loving Joseph with my whole heart and still loving Jada with my whole heart and still loving David with my whole heart. And of course, all of them are after Janae. And I think sometimes we get scared that if we share the impacts and the effects and the love that we have at Church on Purpose with other people, that the love is going to evaporate and that I'm not going to get as much love as I used to get. And that's not how love works. Love has the amazing ability to fill up whatever space we will allow it to fill. And if we expand the space, we are simply creating more space for more love. I find it hard. I have a really tough time remembering what our family was like before all of our kids. When they celebrate birthdays, I'm just like, man, Maya just turned 3. I really cannot remember what it was like to only have 3 kids. Because as our family expanded, so did our love. To the point to where I don't feel like we are missing or lacking anything because we added somebody to our family. As a matter of fact, I feel like what we already had was only enhanced because of what we added to our family. Finally, the church expects you to treat one another with love, dignity, and respect. We talked a lot about this from the reverse perspective, that the church should be treating members with love, dignity, and respect. Well, guess what? The members should be treating other members with love, dignity, and respect as well. And notice this does not say that the leaders should be treating the non-leaders with love, dignity, and respect. The non-leaders should be treating the leaders with love, dignity, and the members should be treating one another with love, dignity, and respect. If you are a member at Church on Purpose, the expectation for you is that you treat your fellow members with love and with dignity and with respect. That is the expectation. Much of the other things that we could list in this in terms of conflict resolution, falls into one of these three categories that are already on your screen. If we can learn how to do this, we can mature in these areas. God can do some really special things through our fellowship. So we'll take 2 or 3 thoughts, and then we'll prepare to close out for tonight.
All right, y'all. Nobody saying nothing. I'm gonna jump in. The point you made about if you're talking to someone about it, they can't do something about it, that's gossip. Thank you for saying that. I do talk a lot. And sometimes I'm learning to grow in that and learning that if I talk so much, there's other people that need to speak and they may have something they need to get to me. I can't hear you.
Sorry. The thing about that is, though, that if you have something to share, I appreciate that you have the courage to share it. Because some of us week in and week out sit on some golden nuggets that could really be a blessing to others. And we don't say nothing. And so you can't stop providing your perspective and your insight because of an assumption that somebody else might have something to say. If they have something to say, then they are going to have to grow to appreciate the value and the wisdom and the insight that they have inside of themselves and the contribution that is to the larger conversation. They're just going to have to grow in that area, but that doesn't mean that you diminish yourself while you're waiting on other people to grow. Because when you are sharing, you are opening yourself to be able to grow, to be able to hear the Lord speak in a different way, and to be able to connect some dots. And I mean, you proved it. What, 4 weeks ago, we was in here dropping bombs, and we had to sit in silence for a couple of seconds, but because of what the Lord shared through you. And so no, like at the end of the day, what you have to share is valuable. And I don't want you to feel like you got to pull back just because you are at a place where it is easier for you to just share. Like, you would be surprised how much of a barrier that is for other people. But continue to walk in that, because it's a meaningful contribution to our conversation. And sometimes, you break the ice for others, which then makes it easier for others to come through and to share. And so, like, if you feel like if you feel like you need to say something, say something. This is this is the place where you're authorized to do that. And I hope that as we continue to grow, as we continue to expand, and not to say that everybody's got to talk all the time. Like, I get that. But what I hope is that we will all get better at not second guessing the Spirit when he's charging us and challenging us to open our mouths. That we won't spend time justifying why we shouldn't say something, or why our contribution isn't going to be valid. And that we will, when the Spirit prompts us, emphasis on when the Spirit prompts us, that we will speak up. Because here's the thing: when it is Spirit led, we in our finite minds, We don't know what the Spirit is trying to do. And when the Spirit is leading us and trying to prompt us, we don't know if we need to say that for us and it's something that we need to get out, or if it's something that somebody else needs to hear.
It's nice to be in a place where someone has that perspective, because I've always been in places where I'm stifled and annoyed and not able to speak.
Well, I'm glad the Lord led you to church on purpose, because your contribution is valuable and we thank you for it. And this is a perfect example of it, because this gives, you provided the platform for us to be reminded of the importance of responding to the Spirit. So thank you. Anybody else?
So I missed probably the first 30, 40 minutes of the discussion tonight. But I did catch the last 20 or so minutes. And, this discussion that we're having now about not being afraid to talk about things is so extremely important. I say all the time, if church is not the place where you can be your real authentic self and where you can go and talk to people about what's really going on in your life, it may not be everybody you tell it to, but somebody, then what is the church, for? We're supposed to be here to help carry each other's burdens and to be here, for one another. Stewardship also incorporates not just your time and your money, or your talent, but your love and the things that you do for people. And the last thing that I would say is, Jonathan, you talked about how, sometimes we go through things during the week and we might share them with you, but, we don't share them with other people. And this week, God's message to me in my time with him has been that he is the answer to all of my problems, not money. And so I will just share that with you all. But he has been speaking that to my spirit and then bringing that up in different situations. And as I put my faith in that he's the answer to all of my problems, that faith manifests itself in solutions. And so, my testimony is the word is for real, y'all. And the word is definitely true. And if we seek God first, and seeking God first means something different for everybody, what seeking God first for me, it does not mean the same thing for you. But go seek God first for yourself, and he will not let you down ever, never, ever. And I love y'all.
That, my friends, is what you call a testimony of faith. And that testimony of faith supports the church, because somebody needed to be reminded of that tonight. How do I know? Because y'all started putting stuff in the chat. Go ahead, Anise.
I just wanted to say I needed that.
See? See?
Oh, because all day today I have been in my head I have been in my head, and I have. I mean, the the worship that happened on Sunday has just been, it was just overwhelming. And that has been in my head, and the songs have been in my head, and I have just been over and over again in my head, talking to God the last few days, and we've got something going on. We've got something going on, and I'm just like, okay, Lord, what are we supposed to do? Because we're in a situation that there's nothing we can do. And I'm okay. So this is that time that there's nothing we can do but have faith. And so, you know, I I had a conversation with Pastor Hawkins yesterday, and I mentioned to him the fact that you had those God did it journals, and the fact that we were dwelling on things that God had done for us before, or that's what they were supposed to be for us to dwell on things that God had done before. And brought that up and everything, and shared something with him real briefly. And he was just like, wow, that's the kind of stuff that we're talking about. That's what journaling is supposed to do. We're supposed to write that stuff out. And and I started thinking about that stuff, and Gladys just put it into perspective right there. You know, God is the answer to all of our problems, not money, not being able to get a job, or working overtime or whatever, but God is the answer to our problems. So, and he can do anything. He can do anything. So, we're supposed to seek him and trust him to answer and feel, provide. He's provision, so wow. I just wow. Thank you, Gladys. Thank you, Pastor Jonathan. I really appreciated that. I needed that.
God is good.
Yes, it is all the time.
That was really awkward too, because you almost called me Pastor Chapman. That's my dad.
You caught that, huh?
That's you too. That's you too, son.
No, thank you, for sharing again. That is that's a testimony of your relationship with this church. You know, being able to come together with your brothers and sisters and being edified by what other people say, man. Like, I really hope we appreciate how unique that is, because everybody is not blessed to be able to operate in a space like this where we can come together and we can share and be edified, be encouraged, be inspired by what other people are sharing. Like, there's places out there where all people do is try to tear each other down and try to jockey for position and try to expose how much you don't know and how much more they know than you do and how much better they are than you and how much far you still have to go. And I love the space that we are able to create here, where we're all learning and growing together, where we're all on this journey of building deeper, more meaningful relationships with Jesus Christ and better understanding his kingdom so that we can better live it and better appropriate it on a daily basis with however much time he blesses us with left in this world. And that is such a beautiful place to be. And and he is clarifying what's next for us. And it is beautiful. Even as I'm sitting here and I'm seeing it and I'm thinking about it, I'm thinking about what he's preparing us for, and what he's challenging us for, and the kind of opportunities that he's going to provide for us. My eyes are sweating because it is so beautiful, and because I know that he's going to do exceeding abundantly above all that we can ask, think, or imagine. And there's so much that you all have been longing to see happen in church. And I don't mean like people shouting and sliding under pews and all that other kind of stuff, but I'm talking about like people's lives legit being transformed by the power of God, like people coming out of oppression and depression, and coming out of sickness and illness, and coming out of destructive behaviors, and coming out of detrimental lifestyles. Like the manifested transformative power of our God, being able to see that and be a witness to that and be a conduit of that and have a front row seat to God literally transforming people's lives. Like it is on the way. And like that is not even that does not even adequately communicate the amazingness of what I see. But I'm telling you right now, God is intentional about everything that he does, and that includes challenging us to get our finances together, to get out from the oppression of debt in our lives and being limited by what we can't do because of the weight of debt in our lives. God is intentional about what he does, about challenging us and charging us to be clear about what it means to be a disciple of his and to be a member of this church. God is intentional about what he does, about providing us with this space to be able to have these conversations, to be able to be clear about this, and to be challenged to be better. He is intentional about what he does. And if we will take the lessons and we will actively work to apply them and be ready when the test comes, and if we can pass the test, then I'm telling you, what he is trying to take us into next is going to be mind blowing, not only for you, not only for our church, not only for our community, but for people that you don't even know exist yet. He's preparing us, but we got to do our part. We got to be present. We got to be here to grow. We got to be vested. We got to be committed. We got to do the tough work of working on ourselves so that all that stuff in us that is getting in the way of him being able to flow through us is cleared out of the way. So that when, with our saved and sanctified selves, the Lord sends us the people that need to meet him through us, we don't get in the way. And I'm telling y'all, some of y'all thought coming to church on purpose was about getting your life together. There's more that could be said, but it ain't gonna be said because I asked the senior leaders to stay after Bible study tonight for a short meeting. And so I want to be respectful of their time. So we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna wrap up this study tonight. And all I'm gonna say is I love y'all. I appreciate y'all. I am daily trying to be a better pastor for our church, so that we can become everything that God is giving us the opportunity to become. But here's the thing about opportunities. Opportunities are not guarantees. Opportunities have to be taken advantage of. And the opportunities that God is giving us and that he's going to give us, that he's preparing for us even right now, if I told y'all about the conversation that me and Talisha had yesterday, we'd be on here the rest of the night. But the stuff that God is preparing for us, if we are ready as much as we can be when it comes, the testimony to the world Father, we thank you so much for blessing us with the time that we have had tonight to be reminded of the power and the impact of expectations. And I pray, Lord Jesus, that you would help us to be clear about our expectations in our relationships, whether with you or with our church, with our spouse, with our significant other, with our children, with our friends, with our employer, with our neighbors. Help us, God, to be able to acknowledge our expectations. And then where our expectations are righteous, help us to communicate those effectively to others. And Lord, I just pray that you would help us to live up to the expectations that you have for us as members of your church, that we would live our lives in a way that bring you glory and honor, and that support the work that you're trying to do through this church. And where we're falling short, Lord, I pray that you would convict us and challenge us to grow. We want to grow. We want to be better. We want to be everything that you've made us to be. So help us to release the fear. Yes, we might still be scared, but help us, God, to do it scared. Give us courage to be who it is you called us to be and to not be afraid of being who it is you're calling us to be. Thank you for choosing us, Lord. Help us to not waste the opportunity in Jesus' name. Amen. God bless y'all. Have a wonderful night. I appreciate you.